The fire that struck Brazil's National Museum was a preventable tragedy.
Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
In the days following the fire at Brazil's National Museum, we are learning that neglect contributed to the devastation. The museum didn't even have sprinklers, and its smoke detectors weren't even working. Hi there, I'm Jeff, and on today's episode of Plain English, we'll also talk about the efforts to digitize museum collections around the world and about the good work that Wikimedia Commons is doing to collect images of Brazil's National Museum after the fact. At the end of the episode today, we'll talk about what it means to come to grips with something. Today is episode 86 for Monday, September 17th, 2018. Happy Independence Day to all of you listening from Mexico. Independence Day was yesterday. The transcript of today's program can be found at plainenglish.com/86. And like every episode, we have translations of the hard words and phrases from English into 6 languages. They are Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, French, Italian, and Japanese. As Brazil comes to grips with the devastating fire that destroyed its national museum and 90% of its holdings, it is becoming increasingly clear that the tragedy was preventable. Years of neglect and budget cuts led to a dangerous situation. The museum did not have a fire suppression system. The best it had were some smoke detectors and a few fire extinguishers. The smoke detectors in the building were not even working, according to the deputy director of the museum. Local media reported that museum employees had to collect money just for cleaning services. A museum professor said that successive federal governments had not provided the budget necessary to maintain the museum in proper condition. When firefighters arrived on the scene, the fire hydrants closest to the museum were not working, so they had to pump water from a nearby pond, adding to the delays in putting out the fire. In a devastating irony, the fire struck just weeks before the museum was to receive a $5 million government grant to install a fire suppression system, including sprinklers. This was not the only museum in Brazil to have suffered from neglect. The Paulista Museum in Sao Paulo is closed for renovations. An entire floor of the museum is in danger of collapsing. Hopefully, that work can happen without any loss of its collection. Many Brazilians took to social media and the streets to protest the neglect of such a large treasure. One noted that a quarter of the money spent on just one World Cup stadium would have been enough to install a fire suppression system that could have prevented or greatly reduced the damage from this fire. Brazil is not alone in losing national treasures due to disasters like this. A fire struck Hampton Court Palace in Britain in 1986, destroying parts of a palace built in the 1500s. The New Orleans Museum of Art suffered after Hurricane Katrina. Museum collections were damaged or lost in the tsunamis that struck Japan in 2011. Over 1,000 artifacts were damaged in the Malawi National Museum in Egypt during protests and civil unrest in 2013, and India and Nepal have lost priceless artifacts due to fire and earthquakes there. Hopefully, this tragedy can teach a lesson to governments around the world about the importance of safeguarding their national treasures. Museums should assess building security, disaster management, and protection against fires, floods, and other disasters. The Smithsonian Institute in the United States even has a course for museums on preservation and disaster planning. But no matter how much planning goes into disaster prevention, there is always going to be at least some risk that the physical collection of a museum will be destroyed. That is just a fact of life. Even the best museum is not invincible. But we live in the digital age, and museums have the option of digitizing their collections, not only so that they may be preserved in some way in the event of a disaster, but also so that their collections may be more accessible to people who cannot see them in person. For items like paintings and drawings and other flat works of art, high-resolution photographs can be taken and uploaded online. But for many items in museums around the world, digitizing a collection is about more than just taking a photograph. To digitize three-dimensional objects, researchers take the object down and subject it to detailed 3D scanning. Even for flat objects like paintings, the photographs have to be the highest possible resolution with the best possible equipment in order to faithfully reproduce the actual painting or drawing. The process also includes attaching all the information we know about an object to its electronic record. High-quality digitization has the advantage of providing a much more realistic online archive of an artifact, but it is also expensive and time-consuming. Digitization is often a luxury that many of the world's museums do not have. The Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, which is one of the best museums in the United States, released 375,000 images in its first wave of digitization. The images also come with tombstone data, the information you read about on placards on the wall, making it easier for people to interact with the collection online. The Smithsonian Institution, a collection of free museums in Washington, D.C., has an ambitious digitization project, but they have 140 million objects, an almost impossible amount to photograph and digitize. Due to the sheer size of the collection, the Smithsonian and many other museums around the world are limited in what they can digitize. In the wake of the tragedy in Brazil, the Wikimedia Foundation, which runs the popular website Wikipedia, has solicited photographs from users to catalog and preserve images of the collection. They also run a website called Wikimedia Commons, which collects public domain images. The site had 200 images from the National Museum before the fire, but they are now collecting thousands more from volunteers who took their own photographs. The Portuguese language Wikipedia site and later the English language site asked users to submit their personal photos from the collection. The response was impressive. Thousands of images came in after just a couple of days. Wikimedia has volunteers who go from museum to museum in Brazil and around the world, helping museum directors digitize their collections. I know digitization is good. Actually, in researching this episode, I took some time to browse through the Met's collection online, and the images are really fantastic, and you can learn a lot from the information they have posted. But your screen's resolution is only so sharp, and there is something really special about getting to see a painting or sculpture or a piece of art in person. Last week, I had the chance to go to the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, and on the second floor, they have a hallway with Egyptian artifacts, including mummies, drawings, sculptures, pottery, things like that. They were from thousands of years ago, hundreds of years BC, some of them, and they looked like they could have been created yesterday. They were so well preserved. The colors were vivid. They were in perfect shape. You can look at one piece in person and take yourself on a journey back in time and imagine the people who created that piece of art. Learn about what the different pieces meant and said about society. And that's something you'll never get on a screen. Quick hello to two listeners today. First, Adelton from Brazil. I asked him what the mood was like in Brazil after the museum fire, and he confirmed that people are sad about the loss, but also disappointed in the government for not investing in the proper care and maintenance of the building. That seems to be what people are thinking right now, so thanks to Adelton for providing that context for me as I prepared the last two episodes. Also, Carlos from Colombia. Carlos is 16 years old, and he listens to Plain English and reads investing websites, all in English. If you are 16 and already listening to this program, then you are going to be perfect in English before you know it. Thanks, Carlos and Adelton, for listening, and keep up the good work. Listen, if you are in Mexico, I have some good news for you. JR and I will both be in Mexico, and we would love to say hello to you. We'll be down the weekend of September 29th and September 30th. Not sure exactly what day we'll be free, but send a note to JR. His email address is jr@plainenglish.com. jr@plainenglish.com. If you will be in Mexico City that last weekend of September, we will organize something informal to do together, and we'll send you the details by email. So just shoot JR a note, and we will get in touch with you. Okay, today's English expression is to come to grips. What does it mean to come to grips with something? It means to accept it and to understand the full meaning of something, usually something sad. Brazil is still coming to grips with what happened at their National Museum 2 weeks ago. They are still processing it, still trying to understand and accept what it means. Sometimes after something shocking happens, it can take some time to come to grips with what happened, to understand it fully, and to accept how your life might be different as a result. It can be very hard to come to grips with the death of a loved one, whether it's a parent, a spouse, sibling, or a good friend. Anytime we lose someone close to us, our lives change. We feel a little emptier, right? And sometimes it takes a while to get used to the change. It takes a while to come to grips with the loss of a loved one. But we do process it and move on, even as we remember the person that we lost. We do eventually come to grips with that loss. A person might struggle to come to grips with losing a job. I'm very fortunate that I've never lost a job in my career so far, but I know that it's a very unsettling experience. For many people, it takes weeks, if not months, to come to grips with a job loss. But again, like other types of adversity, we do move on. We do come to grips with that type of a loss. Sometimes you might tell someone to come to grips with reality. If you have a friend who spends too much money, buys stuff he or she can't afford, you might offer that friend some tough love. You might tell your friend, hey, you have to come to grips with reality here. You can't afford to keep spending a lot of money like this. You have to accept the reality of this situation, right? Well, this happens twice a week. We now have to come to grips with the fact that today's episode is about to end. But never fear, today is Monday, and we'll have another episode in just a few short days. We have new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so you can practice your English with podcasts twice a week. And it's super easy if you click subscribe in your purple Apple Podcasts app, or follow if you prefer to listen in Spotify. You might not know it, but if you have a recent iPhone, you already have the Apple Podcasts app installed, so that's a great way to listen if you haven't done that already. JR and I are going to sign off for today. Have a great week. Don't forget to send JR a note if you'll be in Mexico the last weekend of September. He is jr@plainenglish.com. My email address is Jeff, Jeff, at plainenglish.com. We love hearing from you, whether you're in Mexico or anywhere else in the world. And you'll be hearing from us again on Thursday.